Okay. All right. Is my screen full screen for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. All right. So first off, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with all of you today and giving me the opportunity to share some information about the Talking Book and Braille Library. My name is Jane Bentley, and I'm a librarian with the New York State Talking Book and Braille Library. And at the State Talking Book and Braille Library, we provide audio and Braille books and magazines to individuals with print disabilities. If you if you have any questions, just feel free to pop them in the chat, or we'll definitely have time at the end to go over any questions too. So you can hold off if you'd like. But let's get started. Okay, so today I'm going to provide an overview so you can learn about our library resources and how we function, who we serve. And then we'll talk about eligibility, so how patrons can apply and what that process looks like. And then we'll talk about the library collection, what kinds of materials we have, and then the formats that we have available. And then we will also talk about the role of a public library and what that means if a public library is a Talking Book and Braille Library member. So let's get started. So first, the New York State Talking Book and Braille Library, also known as TBBL, TBBL, is a division of the New York State Library, and we're located in Albany, New York. We are also we're considered a regional library, also with the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled. And their acronym is NLS. And NLS is a division of the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. And they play a really key role in how we serve our patrons. They provide our books and magazines. So they are the ones that are responsible for recording and producing our materials. They determine our policies, and that includes policies for eligibility. And they also help us implement changes to improve our service. So if there's a major service change, they'll help us roll that out. Or say, for example, they have a new piece of equipment. The materials would all come from NLS, and then they would help us distribute those to our patrons. So through the partnership with NLS, our library does circulate playback equipment, accessories, and NLS produced Braille and audio materials to eligible individuals in our service area, and that's all for free. Individuals are eligible for our service if they have difficulty reading standard print, and that could be due to blindness, a visual impairment, a physical disability, or a reading disability. And if an individual is eligible, then they can apply and then start receiving materials sent directly to their home or downloading. So that brings me to the next point. We offer different options for patrons depending on how they want to access our materials. So the majority of our patrons receive their books and materials delivered to their homes through the US mail. And then others choose to download their books through our free downloading service called Bard. And then some choose to do a combination of the two. So our service includes service to individuals and institutions. So we serve individuals living in our service region who are eligible. And I'll define the service region. The region includes the 55 counties of upstate New York. And so that really is Westchester County and then the counties north in New York State. If an individual lives in New York City, so basically anywhere south of Westchester, so New York City area or Long Island, then their local Talking Book and Braille Library is the Andrew Heiskill Braille and Talking Book Library located in Manhattan. And they offer the same services we do, just to a different geographical area. So we also serve institutions. So an institution is any organization in our service region that serves eligible individuals. So that could be a library, a school, assisted living, veterans organizations, colleges. These are just a few examples. And I also want to point out that each state has at least one NLS network library. So it's a really neat network. If somebody joins a library and then happens to move out of state or within some states just to a different part of the state, then their service can be transferred to a different library. And so they always have service wherever they go. So now I want to talk about eligibility. So I'll explain how an individual qualifies for service and how to apply, and then we'll talk about how an organization like a public library would apply. So to become a TBBL library patron, an individual must qualify for service, and they qualify if they are unable to read standard print due to a temporary or permanent visual or physical disability. And so, for example, if someone is blind, if they're legally blind and they cannot read standard print, then they would qualify for service. If an individual has a visual impairment, then they would qualify. Vision loss is a broad spectrum. So this could be somebody that does have some vision, but it's still, in general, hard to read standard print, then they can qualify for service. Then also if someone has a physical disability where they cannot hold a book or manipulate the pages in a book, then they could qualify for service. And if someone has a reading disability that's severe enough that it impacts their enjoyment of reading, their ability to read standard print. So for example, if someone has dyslexia, and it makes it hard to read standard text, then they could qualify for service. If someone is not sure if they qualify, we really encourage them to reach out so we can go through the qualifications and just ask some questions to see if they really do qualify for service. So if an individual does qualify for service, then we encourage them to apply. And again, the account is free, and they can start receiving books. So our individual application is available online, and it's in PDF and Word format. It's a fillable form, so it could be completed entirely online, or it could be printed and sent in to us by mail, fax, or email, or however the person would like. Applications do ask for the person's contact information, the reason for eligibility, so why they qualify for service, and then their reading preferences, so what they like to read and what they do not like to read. Next, applications must be certified by a competent authority, and this really just means that a designated person has to sign off on the application to verify eligibility for that individual. So individuals who are competent authorities are listed here. And I always like to point out that librarians are considered competent authorities. So if you are working with a patron and you think that they could qualify and benefit from the service, go ahead and sign off on their application. That's we encourage that. So please do. And if you did have any questions about that process, just let us know. So institution service. As I said, institutions can qualify for service as well. And service for an institution can look different depending on the type of institution. But generally, if an organization assists eligible individuals, then that institution can become a TBBL patron and apply for service and receive materials. So our institution application is available on our website. So that could be filled out and then submitted. by email, or you can mail it in. A good example of an institution or an organization that could have an institution's account rather is a school or an assisted living facility. These are good examples because they would have multiple eligible individuals interested in service and that qualify for service at the institution. So either going to school or living at an assisted living facility. So materials can be sent to that institution directly, and then a contact at that organization would then distribute materials to the eligible individuals so they can enjoy reading. Public library membership looks a little different. We can provide materials for you to borrow, but membership is really more about bringing awareness to TBBL service and connecting people to our library. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the next few slides. So here I wanted to discuss the types of books and magazines that we have available in the collection, and then we'll look at the equipment we lend and then how to borrow materials. So first, let's talk about the types of books in the collection. So as a regional library, NLS selects and provides our titles, and then we share them with patrons in our service area. So patrons have access right now to over 130,000 titles as of this morning, but NLS is adding material all the time. So that number could change even tomorrow morning. Patrons can choose from fiction and nonfiction books. We have materials for all ages. And some popular subject areas include award winners, mysteries, adventure, biographies. Westerns are very popular in our library. And we also help patrons find books in series and put them in series order for them. So that's a big deal too. And we have brand new books on the bestseller list, as well as popular classics. So we have quite a range of materials. I would say it's similar to a public library collection or a school library collection. Some popular titles when it comes to magazines are Better Homes and Gardens, AARP, Cricket, Consumer Reports. We have National Geographic and Wired, and many more. We have over 80 magazine titles for people to choose from. Another resource available is the music material collection through the National Library Services music section. This is a department within NLS that specifically deals with music. It's not music for listening. It's more about books about music appreciation and how to learn to play an instrument, and then all kinds of music scores. It's a really neat collection, and patrons can reach out to that unit at the NLS library specifically, and librarians there can connect patrons with materials they offer. But it's a really neat collection. And we also have a growing collection of books in foreign languages. So any languages other than English. So we have Spanish and French, German. I saw today when I looked at the list, they have Mandarin and Cantonese, Arabic, all different languages. It's really neat. There is a need and they're trying to fill that need. So it's neat how they've reacted to patron interests and filled that gap. And one last thing just to point out again is how quickly the collection grows. So materials are added all the time. So it's neat to go back and see the recently added material, but it is growing all the time. So moving on to formats, we offer books and magazines in Braille and audio. So for Braille, we offer Braille books and magazines, children's titles to adult titles. Our hard copy Braille books and magazines are sent through the US mail for free. The image here on the left is just a little example of some of the print Braille books we have. And this is a really specific collection. It's a really neat collection of children's titles where there is a large print text on each page alongside a Braille overlay. So they're really books for sharing. So you can read with maybe, so say, for example, if there is an adult patron and they want to read with their children or grandchildren, they could take out a book with printed text in Braille, and vice versa. If there's a child that wants to read with a friend or an adult and they're a patron of our library, they can check out a book and read with a partner. And audio is probably the most popular format we have. And when I say audio, I mean audio on cartridge. And that's pictured here with a cartridge alongside a blue case. If a patron wants to listen to books and magazines on cartridge, then we supply the talking book player also. And that allows the patron to listen to their cartridges. And for anyone interested in how the audio cartridge technology works, our audio cartridges have a built-in flash drive, and that is what we can add audio book files to. So basically, it's a flash drive that we load up with book files, and then it plays when it's inserted into the talking book player. When patrons join our library, we typically provide 4 cartridges with 6 books on each. So that's just a default. That can change, especially as people get used to the service and they decide that they want fewer books per cartridge or more books per cartridge. We can always change it. We can fit up to 25 to 30 books per cartridge because it really depends on the space on the actual USB drive. So some patrons want as many books as possible, so we max them out and they're very happy. And then the other type of format we have is digital. So we have audio and electronic Braille. So patrons can download audio or electronic Braille books through the National Library Services program called BARD, or Braille and Audio Reading Download. And BARD is the coolest service. Patrons can search and download books and magazines, as I said, in audio and electronic Braille. And every book we have in the whole collection is available. So it's a really nice option if you need something immediately, because you can go right to the app or the computer. Like if you type in the URL for BARD, you can get something immediately. There are no wait lists and there are no returns. There is a quick application necessary for BARD. Once you become a member of our library, it's not an automatic thing that you would have a BARD account. So you do have to complete an online form, but it's a quick form and then we can get you started. When someone downloads electronic Braille, it does have to be paired with a device that allows the person to read Braille. And I have a picture in the next, I think it's the next slide, of how that can happen. But the picture here is an image of the BARD app interface. And the BARD app is free and it's available for Android and iOS devices. And then, as I mentioned, you can also download books through the BARD website on a computer. And then you can transfer those book files to a flash drive or an audio cartridge, and then play the books using your talking book player. And so no matter how someone wants to download, we offer support. So we can always walk someone through how to use both options, the computer or the app. So let's talk about some equipment and accessories. So we lend a talking book player to patrons if they're interested in listening to books and magazines on cartridge. And a player is pictured here. It's about 9 inches long, 6 inches wide, and about 2.5 to 3 pounds. The player has a rechargeable battery and it can be plugged in. It does have about 30 hours of battery life, so you can play it and plugged in or unplugged. The player does not require the internet to work. The player offers simple navigation, so you can turn the player on and off and alter the volume, speed, or the volume and the speed of the narrator. And in the picture here, you'll notice that the buttons are pretty bright and they're large, and they contrast with the background of the player itself. And that's all intentional for individuals with low vision. And then there are also Braille dots alongside each control button too. So if someone is blind, they could use the Braille dots to navigate the player. And there is a handy feature where when you get the player and you start it up, there's a tutorial that explains all of the buttons. The next item that we can provide is a high volume player. That is a pretty specific device. It's something that requires another application and it has to be signed by a doctor. It's a player that is magnified, amplified. If someone has profound hearing loss, they can use that. If our player does not work for them, that's always an option, but it's quite amplified, so it does need a doctor's approval. We provide headphones if someone wants some privacy when they're listening to their books. And we can provide download accessories. So the image here on the bottom right is just an example of a cord we can provide. It allows someone to download books and transfer the files from a computer to a cartridge. And then we also offer a breath switch. That's an add-on to the player that would allow someone to navigate the player using their breath. So if someone has limited dexterity where it's tough to push the buttons on the player, that might be a good option. And then the future is with Braille displays. So this is a really cool device, and it's the image on the top right. And this is how an individual could download electronic Braille through Bard and then read electronic Braille using their Braille display. So essentially it's like a Braille keyboard, and it allows you to download e-Braille files and then read the book line by line. This is something that NLS is going to provide in the future. We have some demo players at the moment, but we don't have enough to send out to patrons, but this is coming. And this should expand the use of our Braille collection, which is exciting. So now let's talk about how you would borrow books and magazines. So we touched on this a little bit. So there are two ways to receive books and magazines. You can have books delivered through the US mail, and you can also download them. So the most popular way to receive books and magazines is to have them delivered through the US Postal Service to a specific address. That's probably how the majority of our patrons are using our library, really. So patrons can receive books on an automatic basis, where our computer database looks for books based on a patron's preferred subject preferences, and then those books get added to a cartridge and sent out. Or if it's Braille, then they would be sent out based on the subject. The other option is the total opposite. So this is where patrons can download books, can select books on their own. So they only get books that they request. Patrons can contact our library with their requests, and they can build up their reserve list, or they can go onto our online catalog and select their own books for delivery. And just to note, because we create cartridges for our patrons, where we are actually downloading the books and adding them to the cartridges, there are no wait lists anymore for books that are sent through the mail. And there really are no loan periods either. Basically, when someone wants to have more books sent to them, they return a cartridge through the mail, And then when we receive it, our system is prompted to send another out. So they always have a continuous flow of books. For Braille books, we do have a loan period. It's about 30 to 60 days, depending on the book. And that's just because we have a limited supply of our hard copy Braille books. And of course, if you're downloading, you have immediate access all day, every day. And there are no loan periods, and you don't have to return the book either. It's not like it disappears from your device. You really only have to delete it if you run out of space on your phone, which does happen to some of our patrons. So to have a public library membership, again, as I said before, it really is about bringing awareness to the service. There may be patrons you work with that are just not aware of the service, or if they are, they might not realize that they qualify. So by promoting the service, they might understand it a little better and might be interested, but also you might reach family members or friends of eligible individuals, and it might help spread the word that way. A public library's role can be to introduce TBBL service. You can demonstrate our materials, help an eligible individual apply for service, or simply refer the person to our library directly for more information. If we can help support you in any way, in sharing our service or even an in-service with your staff, please let us know. That's what we're here for. We're happy to help. A public library partner is welcome to borrow TBBL materials for display and demonstration purposes. So we can send you books and magazines, and we can send a player. And we also encourage library staff to create a demonstration BARD account that gives staff members an idea of what it's like to create the account, but also have giving experience in how to download. The demonstration account provides access to just a few titles, but it does still give you a better idea of how it works. And of course, we can also send flyers and brochures out to you that you can use for display purposes. So I really appreciate the time here today to explain our service, and I would love to answer any questions if you have those.
Thanks, Jane. That was fantastic. Anyone have any questions? You could either unmute or place them in the chat, and I'll give you a minute or two. And I will say, if you work, the librarians, if you work with any community organizations like collaboratives and such, feel free to invite Jane to attend a meeting and provide the presentation, because a lot of those community organizations work with the population that would benefit from this service. So connecting them together is great. I don't see any questions yet.
Okay. And if someone thinks of something later, feel free to reach out too. That's totally fine.
Jane, how old do you have to be to use TBBL? I mean, can students?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep. So you can be, there is no age limit. We have children's titles. We have pre-K, little kids titles, and then there's no limit at all. We certainly encourage students, and a big deal is to have the schools be part of our library. So we send materials to the school directly. And then we also encourage a student using the materials at school to create their own individual account. That way they have service at home and at school.
Thank you. There are a number of questions in the chat. I don't know if you would like to read,
Oh, yeah.
or I can read them to you.
Let's see.
So the first is, how can we get an access demo Bard account?
Yep, so if you are a member of our library, then we can send you a link to the Bard demo account. It's an online forum, again, just like a patron would fill out, and then you would create an account. So you'd get a username and a password. Well, excuse me, your username is the email that you use to sign up. And then you create a password, and then we send you information about how to get started downloading. And I should say too, we provide a demo account for public libraries to use, and anyone in your library can have a demo account. But if a patron comes to your library and they really need help, and they give you permission to help them, then you can do that. It's not like you're not allowed to see the app or anything. The National Library Service, I think, limits the public libraries access to just a few titles. That way, you have it for demonstration purposes only. But if someone comes to help and asks for help, you can certainly help them with their full access account. Let's see. So books have no due date when access through TBBL. So only Braille books, like the physical hard copy Braille books, have a due date, but everything else, if you download, there are no restrictions. I think I should say, actually, the only restriction is that you can't download more than 100 books in a 30-day period, and we do have people do that, but that's your only restriction. If you get cartridges through the mail, if you take 6 months to listen to those, then that's fine, because if someone else wanted those books, we would just be able to download them for someone. So it doesn't impact anybody else if you have the books out for longer. The real impact is just if you want new ones, then you have to send your cartridge back to tell us that you want more. And then if we have cartridges at our library, how do we return them? So if you have a cartridge and it still has its address card, if it's the old address card, then you can flip that over and it will have our address in Albany on that side, and you can just pop that in your outgoing mail and it will get back to us for free. If it does not have an address card, you can let us know and we'll send you one, and we can email you an address card too. If it's the new cartridges that we were sending out, it would have a sticker on it with our return address, and you would just take the note card out of the case, and so the sticker is displayed, and then pop that in your outgoing mail.
Thank you. Any other questions? I don't hear any, so I'm going to end recording, and thank you, Jane.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate it.